So in this video I'm going to show you how to make a little chat bar. This chat bar is going to be able to accept messages through a public method. This main method is going to control most everything in the chat box. We're going to learn how to use the input field to send messages, and we are also going to be changing the color of various messages to indicate that they are different types of messages. Let's begin. Alright, so go ahead and create a new project. Name it whatever you want. It can be 2D or 3D, it doesn't matter because we're going to be using all UI. Alright, so now go into your hierarchy and create an empty. Reset the transforms and name it Game Manager. Next, select Add Component and type in Game Manager, and then new script, and then create an add. Alright, so here we are in our Game Manager script. Let's just start by getting rid of the comments. And then down below the Game Manager class, we're going to create a new public class. We're going to call it Message. And inside this message class, we're going to create a public string, and we're going to call it text. And above the class, the message class, we're going to put square brackets, and we're going to write system.serializable. Alright, so let's create a new list of messages. We're going to call it message list, and we're going to set it equal to new list of messages. Now that we have that done, let's come down to the bottom and let's create a new public void send message to chat. And this is going to take a string called text for now. Alright, so inside this method we are going to do a few things first. So we're going to create a new message variable called new message, and we're going to set it equal to new message. Then after that we're going to set new message.text equal to text, and then we're going to type in message list.add new message. Alright, so this is basically setting it up so that we can add our message to the message list and keep track of it, right? So we can visualize this actually by coming up here and typing in serialize field. This doesn't need to be public because it's not going to be accessed by anything else other than this script. Now in the update function, we're going to check if input dot get key down, and then we're going to type in keycode dot space, and underneath this we're going to use the send message to chat method, and we're going to type in you pressed space. Alright, let's do you press the space key. Real excited and all. Then if we come into here, we can see our message list. Oops. And let's press play and let's see what happens. So as you can see, every single time I press the space bar, the list increases in size. Now, this is actually kind of tricky because we don't want our list to be infinite. So, first of all, let's change something really important, and then let's add a new variable directly above the message list, and let's make it a public integer. Let's call it max messages, and let's set it equal to 25. So now we can check to see if message list dot count is greater than or equal to max messages, then we are going to go message list dot remove, and we want to remove the first variable, the first element, so we're going to go message list, and then in square brackets we're going to type 0. Let's add a debug.log, and let's put in space. Alright, now in the console, let's have a look, and let's see what happens when we run this. So I can press space bar as many times as I want, and once we get to 25, you can see there's 25 there and 25 here. The number in the console keeps increasing, but the number in the game manager doesn't increase, because basically what's happening is it's removing this first element and adding a new element onto the end. So this is how you're going to limit your chat. Once all that's done, we're going to want to create all the UI elements that make up our chat. So let's go into our hierarchy and create a new UI scroll view, and then let's set our view. Alright, and now let's take the canvas, and under canvas scaler, let's set it to scale with screen size. And then let's take our scroll view, let's move it over to the side, and let's shrink it down a bunch. Let's make it like, maybe like that actually. That probably works. And then we're going to also create a new UI input field, which will be useful for later. Now just very quickly run through and get rid of all the image elements on the various game objects in the scroll view and the input field, keeping in mind that the image on the slide the image on the scroll bar is under the scroll bar and the handle. You can feel free to set the colors to whatever you like. I'm quite partial to a sort of transparent black, and I will make the input field a much darker shade of transparent black with the text set to white. And let's also change the text size to best fit and go from 6 to 100 for both the text objects in the input field. And then let's change the size. That should do. Alright. Now, underneath the scroll view viewport, you're going to want to look at this content object because it's a little bit off. So let's change the size to fit the vertical scroll bar. And then let's go under Add Component, Layout, and let's add a content size fitter. And we want to change vertical fit to preferred size. And then we're going to add another component, and we're going to set it to Layout, Vertical Layout Group. The only things we're going to change is that the child alignment is going to be to lower left, and instead of child force expand height, we're going to set child control size height to true. Then we need to reset the anchor point to the, we need to set the pivot to the left, and we need to set the anchors to the bottom. And that should work. Ideally, but it has been known not to. Alright, now that that's done, let's do one last thing, and let's set up the scroll view. So the scroll view will obviously not be horizontal. We will change the movement type to clamped, and we'll set the vertical scroll bar to permanent. Alright, so now we're going to come up here into our game manager class, and we're going to create a reference for two game objects. So the first one will be the chat panel, and the second one will be the text object. And we should probably make these public. Alright, now the text object is going to be a prefab that we create inside the content window. So let's just create a new UI text. Let's set the color to white. Let's change the vertical overflow to overflow. And then let's change the width to just before the scroll bar. Now let's take that and let's put it down into the assets window and delete it. Alright, now let's set up our references. So that's the main camera. So the game manager has those two reference fields. Let's just lock our view so we can just grab our objects and drop them right in there. So we're putting the text object, text prefab into the text object, and we're going to put the content object underneath viewport in the scroll view as the chat panel. Alright, so next what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to change we're going to want to add something that we're using. We're going to go using uniengine.ui. Alright, so next we're going to come down to the message class and we're going to add a new public text, and we're going to call it text object. Now let's start setting things up here. So what we want to happen is after we set the new message text, we want to create a new game object, and we will call this new text object. Or no, let's just call it new text. And we'll set it equal to instantiate text object. And we'll set the parent to chat panel.transform. So next we want to set the new message dot text object equal to new text dot get component text. And then what we want to do is we want to go new message dot text object dot text and set it equal to new message dot text. And then at the end of that we're going to add the new message, of course. One last thing. The objects are going to be created over and over and over again, and if we don't destroy them, they're just going to keep going. So before we remove the message class from the message list, we want to go destroy message list element 0 dot text object and then dot game object because it's a class. If we just destroy the text object, it'll remove the component and the game object will still exist. Alright, so now if we press play, it should work. You press the spacebar, there it is. And then once we get up to 25, oh, I thought I could hold it down, but I guess not. Alright, it works. Cool. So one last thing I'm just going to do is I'm just going to change the scroll bar. Oops, I should probably unlock this. I'm just going to change the scroll bar color to gray. And copy that over to the other scroll bar. Alright, so now we have another issue. Oops. And that is that we have an input field that doesn't do anything. So we can type things, and as you can see, every time I press the spacebar, even while I'm typing, it just sends messages. And when I press enter, nothing happens. So let's deal with that. So I'm going to create a new public input field, and we're going to call it chat box. And then I'm going to grab not the main camera, the game manager. I'm just going to put that up there at the top so I don't click on it again. So we're going to grab the game manager and we're going to drop in the input field. Alright, so now that we have that, let's do, so in order to check to see if the chat box is active, you need to do if chat box dot is focused. And so we're actually going to use this instead of if it's true, if it's false. And inside there we're going to put the key press so that we know that if it's not focused, this is allowed to happen. Now in order to handle our typing, we're going to go if chatbox dot text is not equal to nothing, just to empty quotes. Then we want to check to see if, and then let's actually just copy this one and change it from space to enter, or return rather. So if we press the enter key right above the shift, then we're going to send message to chat, and we're going to input the chatbox.text. And then after that we're going to go chatbox.text is equal to empty quotes. And this is basically just going to reset the chat box to empty. Let's see how this is working. So we're going to enter some text, and it works. Next, we want to create a way for us to be able to activate the input field when we're not actually clicking on it. Go into the if statement at the top of update and add an else down at the bottom, and then inside it we will put if not chatbox dot is focused, so if it's not focused. And actually let's also drop in and input key code return, then we'll set chatbox dot activate input field. The issue I'm having with doing the opposite of this is that it doesn't deactivate when you press enter for some reason. So here we go. So you press enter and then apparently you have to click away, which is not ideal, but I mean, whatever. It is what it is. Let's do one last thing before moving on. Let's create a new variable here, and we're actually going to have to create an enum for it. So let's make it public enum, and we'll call it message type. And inside here I'm going to put two things. I'll put player message and info. So after that we're going to create the variable and we'll make it a public message type, and we'll call it message type. Alright, now we're going to come up to our send message to chat method, and we're going to add message type, and we'll call it message type. So now, as you can see, all of the methods that are being used are reacting negatively. So let's set message type under the you press the spacebar to info, and then let's set the send message to chat under message type player message. Alright, so along with that we're going to want to create a couple colors. So let's go public color player message and info. Alright, so let's set that up. Under the game manager, let's go player message and let's set the alpha to 1 and copy it over. And then let's change the player message to white, and let's change the info to blue, and let's make it a lighter blue just for fun. And let's also desaturate it a bit. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new method, and this is going to be a color method, and we're going to call it message type color, and it's going to take a message.messageType, and we're going to call it message type. Alright, now you can see that the text here is red, and that's because we need to be returning a color. So let's create a color, and let's just call it color. Let's set it equal to info by default. And then we need to return color. Alright, now in between there, we're going to create a switch statement. And this is kind of like an if statement, but it's a little bit more complicated. Basically, you give it a variable, message type, and it checks through a bunch of different cases. So in this one case that we have, it'll be case message type dot player message. And then we put a colon, and then in order to end that case statement, we're going to say break. You can have a bunch of these, because let's say you're using an enumerator. You may create a new thing called, I don't know, loot info, right? And now that you have loot info, you can create another case and make that case, what would happen if instead of player message or info, it was loot info. But we don't need a loot info, we just need a info for now. Alright, now inside here we're just going to set color equal to player message, and that should be it. So like I said, this is basically how it works. It's basically an if statement where you check against one variable that can be set to many different things. You can also use this for integers and floats. Alright, now once that's done, what we're going to do is we're going to go new message dot text object dot color, and we're going to set it to message type color, and we're going to send in message type. Now if we press the spacebar, it comes up as blue, and if we type in hello, it comes up as white. One last thing just to tie everything up. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create a public string username variable. Username. And I'm going to take that variable, and at the beginning of send message to chat, I'm going to pass that in right before chat box, add a plus key, add another plus key, and between the two plus keys I'm going to write a new string, and it's just going to be a colon and a space. So now what should happen is my username should show up, there should be a colon, a space, and then whatever text I wrote. And my username is Super Trooper. So now that's how that's working. And I can write a ton cool stuff, and it just wraps around. And then I can also press spacebar. Oops. I can just press spacebar a bunch. We can go to the top and watch our chat objects start to disappear. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. This is a very simple chat box, and I am hoping to work on some stuff later that may make it a little bit more complicated and interesting. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and take it easy.